when we talk about these celebrations of aging or people toward his lives, and sometimes we even do it at funerals, we only talk about what happened in the last couple years of their life. And often that involves illness or limitations. Yeah. And we forget that maybe this woman was an amazing teacher for years, that she touched people's lives. Or maybe that we forget that this man who's passed away had an amazing life of serving others through his job or through the church. And we sometimes forget to go back and celebrate the entire life. Because sometimes I think what we want to celebrate is like, look at you! You're 80 years old and you're not dead! Yay! Or, look at you! You can still walk around! And it's like, I don't know about you, but when I get to be in my 80s or God willing into my 90s, I don't want people just celebrating the fact that I can walk around and I still make sense. You know? I mean, I may be limited. I may have an illness. I may have a mental condition that happens, and I may not have the full use of my faculties. And it might be a miracle that I can walk, that I can still drive around, that I can still teach a Bible study class. But surely, when I get to be in my 80s and 90s, and you ask me, what is my life about? There's a whole story of what my life is about. And my life is as much about who I am today as who I was when I was 6 years old on the playground getting picked on by this kid Jimmy. And there's a lesson there in how I dealt with that informed my entire life. Or there's a story about when I was in my 20s and I met, this very special person, my wife. Or there's a story about when we first had our kids, or there's a story about when we had to move somewhere unexpectedly, or there's a story about when I decided to become a pastor. And this is what makes up who I am, not what I did last week. It's that and everything else.
This morning I came across another idea. I want to add another column to the worksheet.
Oh, you're an idea factory, my friend.
Another column to capture, I call it the points of celebration.
Yes.
For this story, what's the point of celebration? What are you celebrating?
Yes. Do you know what we do in some of our classes? We've done this before, where we ask people to make a graph of their life. Like, highs and lows of your life. Start with your birth, and this is where you are now. And draw a little graph of, and sometimes we say, draw it according to your relationship to God. When did you feel closest to God? When did you feel the least closest? Or maybe just in terms of how you feel your life was going. When was your life at a high? When was it at a low? And what's funny is that you get someone to draw that, and then you put them in pairs, and you say, explain it to the other person. And someone's going to look at your drawing, and they're going to see a place where it takes a deep dive, and they're going to say, what happened there? And then they'll tell the story. And then they're going to see something that goes up and down, like, well, what was going on there? And there's a story. Or the greatest high point of the graph. Why is the greatest high point way back in your 30s? What was happening there? And so that's another great tool for pulling the story out of someone. Because I can kind of give you a graph that says this was a high point in my life and this was a low and that. And then when you ask me, well, why did you draw that low? I can tell you, oh, well, that's when my dad left when I was 11 years old, Or that's when my grandpa died when I was 19. Or, that's when my wife had a miscarriage. I can tell you these low points in my life. Then you go to these, I go, ooh, that's when I met my wife. Or, ooh, that's when we had our kids. Or, ooh, this is when we found that great church to be pastor of. I can tell you, I can explain these points, and there you get my story, and there you hear how God has been active in my life, and what I've been doing with God over these years, and you hear about the blessings, as well as the curses of life. Yeah.
Thank you. I just run across another idea as we are talking.
Uh-oh! You better get a notepad, buddy. You're going to run it.
Well,
it's all recorded now, huh? Uh-oh.
Because I feel that to explain this whole idea, the whole direction, is too complicated. If you see my chart,
Yeah, it's a
my
lot to
drawing,
get. Yes, yes.
that's the tool I use when I design a system,
Mm-hmm.
an information system. I have to draw the big picture.
Yes.
Everybody, every role, every action,
Yes.
but it'll be impossible to explain it to everyone involved.
No, you just tell me your story. It's very simple.
Yeah, and right now I'm thinking about perhaps I need to start a newsletter. So whoever get curious, they want to know something about this, will receive something gradually.
I think what you need to have they call it your elevator speech.
Uh-huh.
Your explain it to me in 30 seconds.
Yeah,
And that's something that you can practice
yeah.
in front of a camera,
Yeah.
right? I mean, or in
Yeah.
front of the, like, you need to tell this to me in 30 seconds.
Mhm.
What is this that you're trying to get happen?
Yeah.
And then think about, okay, if I were to give you 2 minutes,
Mhm.
then what would you tell me? You need the 30-second version,
Okay.
the 2-minute version, and then the 20-minute speech.
Okay.
But you see what I mean? Because when you grab, so let's say you and I sit down at a luncheon at the Presbytery meeting,
Mhm.
and I say, so, Tony, tell me what it is, this thing you're working on.
Mhm.
If you talk longer than 30 seconds
Right.
without letting me talk,
Yeah.
I start looking around. I go back to eating my meal.
Yeah.
Because it's just, you got to be able to sell the person in the first 30 seconds.
Mhm.
You know? If you don't sell it in the first 30 seconds, they just checked out.
Good. So I have to work on the 30-second and the
2 minutes.
2 minutes.
Because here's the trail. If you catch me with the 30-second,
Mhm.
because if you tell me and I go, oh, that sounds fascinating, tell me more. Well, now I'll give you 2 minutes.
Yeah.
But the first time around, you got to get me in 30 seconds.
Mhm.
Then you give me the 2-minute. And then you got to be prepared for when they stand you up in front of Presbytery and you have to explain it
Yeah.
in maybe a 10-minute speech, you know.
Mhm.
But actually, much over 10 minutes and nobody's paying attention anymore.
Right.
I don't see how people get through my sermons, to be honest with you. But you know, I mean, like, you just cannot keep explaining something, and you're right. And you can't give them a document
Uh-huh.
because they'll just check out. And if it looks complicated,
Mhm.
you know. But I think part of it comes down to that things that are true,
Mhm.
things that are really significant,
Mhm.
I can say in very short words. If it takes me too long to explain it,
Yeah.
it's probably not that significant because I'm having to convince you.
Yeah.
You know, because if I just, it's in the way you sell something. You
Mhm.
know, in the way that you tease them and they immediately see the value of it. Because on some level, you have to convince someone very quickly. Why should
Yeah.
I bother to keep listening to you?
Yeah.
I mean, it's terrible, but it's true.
Yeah.
Every time you have a conversation with someone, whether it's at the store or at the church or wherever, in the first 30 seconds, you have to answer this question. Why should I bother to keep listening to you?
Mhm.
You know, what idea are you selling me? What thought are you trying to share? And if you can't nail it in the first 30 seconds, I just turn it off, you know?
Yeah.
That's why, like, movies
Mhm.
typically have an exciting opening scene,
Yeah.
don't they?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Something that gets your attention right
Yeah.
away. Some movies do these really slow build-ups, but those are